for meeting us today. Our topic is about deforestation issues. The logging industry has been a major source of income in the state of Oregon. What measures are in place to replenish the continent to ensure that deforestation does not adversely affect the environment?
Certainly there is much to do with respect to protecting our treasures. For example, right now I'm working on legislation to deal with the heavily forested O and C counties. These are the counties in southern Oregon where we very much need to boost logging in a sustainable way, but we also need to protect our treasures. And the Oregon Congressional Delegation is very close to an agreement on how to do that. And it is so important, particularly for our students and their future. This is where God put the trees. And the reason that we've always weighed in so strongly on reforestation is that when we harvest, and we do it in a sustainable way, we've got to give back to future generations. So the Oregon Congressional Delegation, and it will come up on Thursday, in the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, will be very much involved in the effort here in the next few days in the United States Senate to strike a balance between ensuring that we have jobs in our rural communities, we log in a sustainable way, but we protect our rivers and our drinking water as well.
Streams and rivers are being polluted by loose soil from deforestation. What are legislators doing to protect wildlife in and around rivers?
What we're going to focus on with respect to the legislation that will be considered in the Senate this week is trying to ensure that there are buffer areas in effect around a lot of those streams and drinking water areas. It's so important in our state to try, because we have so many of those, literally where, you know, a state of streams and wonderful opportunities for our people, and it's drinking water and fish and all kinds of potential benefits to our state. But without those buffer areas for the streams, we'll come up short in terms of protecting them from degradation. And I think your question is right to make that a priority.
Deforestation causes between 12 and 17% of greenhouse gases, and as they increase due to coal burning and other fossil fuels, Earth's heat levels can become dangerously high. What should legislators be doing to reduce the impact of deforestation in the future?
My hope is, and we'll again start to see that, is that protecting our trees can very much be a weapon against climate change, because trees suck up carbon. And this was originally mentioned by Ronald Reagan, so you get a sense of how long the history has been in terms of trees and a role for our forests. But this is something I'll certainly be mentioning in the United States Senate in the days ahead, because the reality is trees and the absorption of carbon really go hand in hand, and it's another reason to focus, as our delegation has with respect to Southern Oregon, on trying to come up with a balanced approach.
My friends and I are studying the impacts of deforestation. Is there a balance that we can reach between deforestation and reforestation?
My sense is, as you study this, you should look at what the Oregon Congressional Delegation is trying to do, in effect, in our backyard. Because we are one of the more heavily forested areas. In fact, the reason that striking this balance, as your question implies, is so important is that really well over 100 years ago, in effect, there were big debates with respect to American forests. And the decision was to create a national forest system. And in effect, that meant that Oregon's national forest belonged to people in Iowa and people in Florida and people all over the United States. And in return, Oregon got big checks for our schools and our roads and police because we didn't have private property that could be sold. And that worked very well for about 90 years. And then by really 1998, that revenue had tapered off, and Oregon schools in particular were really hurting. So I wrote the Secure Rural Schools Bill in 1998. It, along with a similar program, has brought Oregon about $2.5 billion, and it was designed to really focus on helping provide needed services and to protect our treasures, particularly the treasures that were at stake in terms of the inability of communities to reforest and take appropriate action to keep the forests healthy. So now we're taking the next step to the future. It builds on that Secure Rural Schools Bill that I wrote in 1998, and I think we've got an opportunity to be the model for forestry in the future that ensures that we protect our treasures, protect our streams and drinking water, and log in a sustainable and responsible fashion.
Are there any other questions we should have asked?
I think the only other question and an area for students to explore deals with these extraordinary fires that we've seen in recent years. These fires are not natural fires. They're in effect infernos that come about because of years of neglect, where there hasn't been an effort to go in there and thin out the trees. It gets very hot. It gets very dry. Those are issues, of course, that relate to climate change as well. And then you might have a lightning strike, and all of a sudden you have an inferno on your hands. So I very much feel that as part of this effort to look at the forestry of the future, we need to bring communities together and thin out those forests, protect the old growth, thin out in particular the second growth, because these fires can do an enormous amount of damage to the forests of that area. And of course, fires do not know local and federal boundaries. Once you have a fire, it leaps from federal land, state land, private land. Enormous amounts of damage can be done. So by way of one last point, and you all have asked very good questions, you might want to incorporate an analysis of the role of fire in this whole area with respect to forestry policy.
Thanks, Peter.
Please. Thanks.